Hello everyone, welcome to Red Snapper. My name's MJ and this is Snap or Pass. This is the series where we look at the new cards coming into Marvel Snap. We go through their mechanics. We often look at their spotlight caches, however in this instance it's a Deadpool's Diner card, so we'll talk a little bit about that and whether it's worth grinding for this card. We'll talk about synergies, give you some deck ideas, and it's going to be a fun time. You can use the chapters below to skip to a section that you want to see. Unless you want to watch the whole thing. You should watch the whole thing. That'd be cool. And you should subscribe. We recently hit 2,099 subscribers. I haven't filmed the special video yet, but there will be a special 2,099 subscribers video coming soon. It's going to be funny, embarrassing, and cool. Anyway, King Eitri. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is the guy played by Peter Dinklage in Infinity War. The forger, right? The guy who forges the weapons. He forges Stormbreaker. And he's a 1/2, activate, draw a card from your deck that didn't start there. As I said, he's available in Deadpool's Diner. We don't actually know all that many details about this iteration of Deadpool's Diner, other than it is coming to the game on November the 21st. I think last time it was open for just under 2 weeks, and I think we can assume this is probably the top reward. Last time it was Cassandra Nova as the reward, and the top reward was a variant. We haven't seen a variant for King Eitri, so we don't know exactly how it's shaken down yet, but we should know soon. Okay, so let's look at the mechanics for King Eitri. The main archetypes, I think that he will fit into. There's a good fair few, to be fair. So first of all, hammers, you know, like Asgard stuff, like Odin reprocking the hammers from Thor and Beta Ray Bill, that sort of archetype. I think that could work well. Thanos, Arishem, and Loki. So these are obviously all deck archetypes where they shuffle or manipulate or force cards into your deck. It's an activate card, so you can play it early and not disrupt your curve, so this is going to fit in nicely to that style of deck. It increases the reliability of decks where drawing those specific cards is important. So like that Hammers deck, the Asgard deck, you're winning. Depends on whether you draw those cards. So previously you really only had Jane Foster or just luck to draw into those cards. So King Eitri adds another layer of reliability into those. But especially Thanos as well. Like, think about the Thanos-ness. We will of course talk about that in the decks section. However, it is quite a niche card. There's not many cards that add cards into your deck. I mean, it's pretty much these archetypes that I've just mentioned. Loki, sure. Arishem, of course. The downside of Arishem is you're shuffling so many in. Are you ever going to see King Eitri? And when you do, he's an activate. So Thanos, I think, is better, and Hammers is better. So I think the Hammers and the Thanos, those are going to be the two key archetypes to bear in mind for this guy. Lo and behold, I was about to say so. And I said lo. So I styled it out and said lo and behold, and then I explained what I did, and I'm still doing that. Pros. Card draw is extremely strong. To have such a powerful... I don't know why, by the way, I don't know why I'm looking all the way over here. I could just move my image so it's over here. It looks a bit more natural, sorry. I'm not reshooting this video. Pros. Card draw is extremely strong. To have such a powerful effect on a cheap card is very significant. We have got, in the leaks as well, a vaguely similar card called Toxie, who's a 2/4, and she draws a card, but you can't do anything next turn. So this just goes to show how incredibly powerful card draw is. I mean, if you look at a card like Crystal, she's now a 3/4, and she draws a card for you and for your opponent. So, you know, quite expensive for weak stats, and that's even just reciprocal. You know, you and your opponent both get the card draw. So this is an expensive ability and it's on a cheap card. So that's good. It is of course very specific because it's for cards that didn't start in your deck, but don't undervalue how strong that is. That level of consistency that it gives. It's going to feel very fun and satisfying to be able to trigger his ability. So when you do play him down and then you do get that tap off, that is definitely going to release Endorphins, which we know is something that we really like. And it is something that we consider strongly with cards, because if a card can frequently release Endorphins for you, that makes you fall in love with the card more. And so that is an important factor. And the cards he works well with for example, hammers and stones, feel good to play by themselves. So even just playing playing Mjolnir or Stormbreaker, that does release endorphins in itself, because first of all, it's cool to get this card. It's cool to play a zero-costed card. It feels good to play more cards in the game. And then you get the big effects of doubling power or adding 6 power. Those feel good. Similarly, the stones, they draw you a card themselves. And they're cheap. They feel good to play. King Eitri feels good to play. Or will feel good to activate, I should say. So all of these things come together. And it's the word we say again. Endorphins. Which I know is not the real word, but that's what we say around these parts. Okay? I just think this guy's going to feel really good to play. That's basically what I'm getting at. Cons. Gosh. The most fragile little fucker in the entire game, isn't he? I mean, technically, he's no more fragile than any other one cost, but because he's got the activate ability, and because that ability is so sort of important to the deck that you're playing King Eitri in, it's going to feel really bad if you get Electroed, or more likely Killmongered. Being a one-costed card makes him very fragile. Obviously, destroy decks run Killmonger, control decks run Killmonger. Sometimes there's other styles of decks that run Killmonger, or Electro, or Gambit, or whatever it is. This guy is easily targetable to be killed. Lady Deathstrike. More, yeah. Hopefully you've activated him by the time Lady Deathstrike comes out. Anyway, and it will feel bad to draw on turn 6, and might be hard to justify playing him on the later turns, like turn 5. I mean, yeah, you can activate on 6, but that's too late. So really, you sort of, the window for this guy is like turns 1 to 4, pretty much. And even turn 4 might be quite late, so it's a little bit difficult. Moving on to the locations, good and bad for King Eitri. There's not really any bad locations. Like, there's no locations that are bad for King Eitri that are particularly bad for him and not bad for anyone else. Like, it's sort of fine. I mean, there's kind of locations like, what, Gamma Lab, which he can turn into help, but you can maybe activate him before then anyway. So, yeah. There's no locations that are worse for him than anyone else. Maybe that would be a different story if there was a location where cards can't be activated. I think that will probably come to the game eventually, but that's probably a while away when activate is a more common mechanic. But there are some good locations. Sinister London might be quite good, especially in a Hammers deck. If you... Well, I do still think you'll run Jane Foster in the Hammers deck. But if you can get King Eitri down on Sinister London, that at least gives you a little bit of redundancy. And if you do manage to get Thor and or Beta Ray Bill down, you can actually play them on Sinister London. And then you can draw out 2 hammers and everything goes absolutely crazy. So that's going to be really cool. Atalan is probably quite a good one. Your deck's getting shuffled, but you're going to be able to peel back some value and regain some resource there. Lechuguila. Why on earth have I put that as a good location? Well, listen, it probably isn't a good location. Maybe good location is slightly over-egging it. But if you do happen to play into Lechuguila and you've got King Eitri, you can at least thin your deck a bit more. Like, if you're... This is really on the consideration of if you have to play there, and if your opponent has to play there. There might be some circumstances where you have to play into there, and it's more punishing for your opponent than you, because you can at least recuperate one of those resources and thin your deck of the rocks. Nowhere probably going to feel quite nice because they can't at least Electra it, they can't Lady Deathstrike it, so it's a bit safer in there than it might be in other locations. Hell's Kitchen's just going to damn draw it, and that's good because this will be by turn 3 probably, you know, unless there's like Scarlet Witch or that sort of thing. So you draw it before turn 3 or on turn 3, you're able to play it out, and then you'll be able to activate it before the end of the game, so that's cool. And District X is going to just give you extra resource because you can draw out the card from one of the cards from District X, so that's cool. Counters, like I said, this guy is a fragile little isn't he? Korg is going to shuffle a rock into your deck, so if you are playing a hammer deck, you might draw a rock instead of Mjolnir. That's going to feel awful. Electra, I tell you what guys, I think Electra is starting to get better. There's some really key targets recently for Electra. I think Electra's very good with Malekith. I think if King Eitri becomes popular, that might be a thing. Also interesting, you know, Thanos has just had a buff. Is Electra going to be a good one to take out cards like, or stones like the Power Stone or the Soul Stone to make that Thanos weaker, or the Space Stone in special use cases? So I think Electra is starting to rise in value a little bit. Killmonger, absolute assassin. Black Widow, activate. Sorry, I just said the word activate. She's now an activate card, so she has been essentially nerfed. She used to be an on-reveal. So it's going to be a bit more difficult and a bit more time consuming for your opponent to play out Black Widow and activate her before you've got King Eitri out and activated your draw ability. But if that happens to coincide at some point, you know, you're playing Thor, or maybe you've only drawn Beta Ray Bill, they can block your King Eitri draw because they... Actually, that's bloody interesting. I wonder whose activate goes off first, Black Widow's or King Eitri, because they both happen... I guess it just comes down to who's got priority, wouldn't it? Anyway, finally, the other counter is Red Guardian, who is just naturally one of the best counters in the game. Again, though, certainly in the Thanos deck, hopefully you've already done it. In the Thor one, that becomes a bit more problematic, and honestly, it's almost something they could probably snap into if they've got Red Guardian. But that's why you always have Jane Foster as the backup, the redundancy there. Moving on to key synergies and decks. So I think we've spoken about all of these cards except for one, which is Hulkbuster. And you might be like, why is Hulkbuster a key synergy? Well, for these types of decks, Loki, Arishem, and Hammers, they all can run into space issues. Especially like Hammers, you're playing down, what, a couple of 0-costed cards. King Eitri himself is a 1-costed card, so these are lots of cheap cards. You don't have masses of room. And so Hulkbuster just allows you to get a little bit of extra power onto the table. Onto the... as if it's poker or something. Well, it is Deadpool's Diner, isn't it? So it's all connected, isn't it? And Hulkbuster also works well with Beta Ray Bill as well. Getting the +3 turns him into a 9, and getting that 9 doubled makes him 18. So yeah, for your consideration. Anyway, these decks, guys, honestly, there's only one that I even like. No, I do think the Thanos one is quite good, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. This Hammer one, I mean, you might just be better off playing a Lockjaw Hammer deck, but I'll at least talk through some of the stuff we got here. We've got America Chavez, because you have got a couple of cards in here that re-trigger some effects. So we've got Misery and we've got Odin. Why would you re-trigger America Chavez with Odin? Well, we do actually have magic in here as well, so you will get a turn 7, or you may get a turn 7. You've also got a strong on reveal here in the way of Medusa. So Medusa might be able to help you secure the middle, and you might even be able to make the middle location your Odin location if you can get Medusa down, and then the hammers, and then Odin. That's actually a surprisingly decent amount of power for the middle that they might think you're not even contesting. What is like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's like 17, something like that. So they might think you're really not contesting it at all, and they like waste resources doing Shang-Chi somewhere else, or on one of your Thor or Beta Ray Bill, and actually you put up a surprising amount of power in the middle. Could be a thing. We've also got the space saving considerations in here with Agony and Hulkbuster. Agony has the added benefit of having synergy with Beta Ray Bill because his power can get doubled. And we got the redundancy, of course, of, as we've discussed, Jane Foster in here. We've also got another way to re-proc some of these effects, actually, with Grandmaster. You might want to, if you've got King Eitri or you've got Jane Foster, you might want to Grandmaster a Thor or a Beta Ray Bill, or things like that. Hell, in desperate times, why not re-proc an America Chavez if you've got a good curve? If you've got those going into a Thor, into a Beta Ray Bill, into a Jane, go for it. Have your cake and eat it. Seems fine. Like I say, I don't know if you're better off doing a Lockjaw ting, but it could work. It could work. Now, this is the one that I think is a bit more interesting. This is the Stone Stacks deck. This is somewhat of a ongoing / almost zoo-ish stones Thanos deck. This is because you do want to rely on having your stones here. You don't want them to die. you do have Kyra in here and Marvel Boy in here. Because I thought King Eitri is already like a low-costed card, already taking up a valuable spot, why not turn him into something a bit more powerful? Now, the overall strategy with this deck, I would say you want to try and fill up a right location or a middle location pretty much as soon as possible. If you can get armor down in there as well to give you a bit of extra protection against your 1-cost cards being destroyed, then you can do that as well. But yeah, try and fill up the right. The reason I say that is for 2 reasons. The reason I say fill up the right is because we've got Claw in here. The reason I say fill up at all is because this is one of my favourite ways to win with Thanos decks, is by filling a location, and they may not realise at first how much power you can get into that extra location. Because with this deck, you've got a lot of cards which can get you extra power into that location. You have got, well, you've got things like Dazzler, which can just be surprising anyway, and somewhat mojo to that regard. You have got Marvel Boy, who can get extra power into the location. You've got Claw, you've got Blue Marvel, and you've got Spectrum in here as well. Of course, the King Eitri element to this deck is that they can draw a stone, and that's going to give you more ability to draw the stones, obviously, but just more cards that can get buffed by Marvel Boy, and the rest is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Finally, this one is really weird. I've called it Zurishem. It's an Arishem Zoo deck, which sounds shit, and almost certainly is. I would almost say definitely don't run this. But anyway, you've got King Eitri in here, so you might be able to draw extra resource. You've got Sunspot, because with a lot of lower costed cards in this deck, it means you might be floating energy a lot. And shout out to my boy Gossy, because I know he likes running the Sunspot and She-Hulk combo in Arishem to slurp up and take advantage of all that leftover energy that you might not always be able to take advantage of. So we've got that little sideways combo in here. We also have got some resource generation in the way of Maria Hill. Wow, what's she doing in here? Agent 13 and Kate Bishop as well. And we've again got the Marvel Boy. We've got some Shanna for some late game potential shenanigans or surprise. And Mockingbird to take advantage of all of that stuff. And then you cobble together a win with your surprise stuff. Yes, this I don't know, this is probably not the way to do Arishem, guys. There's not really any tech cards in here. It's probably more so just a bit unpredictable for your opponent. So, yeah, use with caution is sort of what I would say there. Now, moving on to the star ratings. What do we actually think of King Eitri overall? I think he's 3 stars. He's obviously really niche, but I do think, you know, he's fine. He's good. I think he's solid. In the archetypes, in fact, I think he's good. I've given him 4 stars within those specific archetypes. So I think, for myself personally, I'm not sure I'd run Thanos without King Eitri. I just don't think I would. This is partly because I just never seem to draw the stones. So anything that helps me with that is going to be useful for me personally. And I think, yeah, I don't think I'd play Thor and Beta Ray Bill without King Eitri either. So I think in the archetype he's going to be a really important piece. From a fun perspective and from a competitive perspective, I've just given him middle of the road 3 stars. Like we said earlier, I do think he's going to release in Dolphins, so I think he'll be a satisfying card to play, but I'm not 100% convinced that that is fun. There is a delivery driver outside my door, so it's extraordinarily likely that I'm about to get a knock on the doorbell. Or actually, probably just ring the doorbell. None of this is interesting. Hello. Is King Eitri a snap or pass? Yes, I do think he's a snap. However, I think he's a snap because he's free. Is he worth the squeeze of grinding Deadpool's Diner? I mean, in my humble opinion, he is worth it because it's just worthwhile playing that game mode anyway. I personally enjoy it, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But I think when you know how to tackle it, you know, keep a little bit of your bubs in reserve, play aggressively when you've got the amounts to spare, and be smart about snapping. You know, when you've got your goat combo, make sure you go heavy on that particular play, and just slowly treat it casually, right? Gradually work your way up it and try to enjoy it. And I think King Eitri should be, you know, obtainable. I don't want to say easily obtainable, but obtainable if you're able to play the game a lot over this 10-day period or however long it is. And then I think, you know, you're getting a card. Yes, it's niche. If you don't have Thanos, if you don't like the Thor archetype, and you don't like Deadpool's diner, then maybe it's probably a skip for you, or I should say pass. So yeah, but ultimately, it's potentially a free card. It might be something that you're able to enjoy in the game mode, Deadpool's diner. So I just feel like I'm saying absolute words now, and they're not making much sense. I am just going to end the video. Thank you very much for watching. God, this just feels like it's gone to madness. I'm just going to say, I'll see you next time. Cheers. This is the weirdest ending to any video ever anyone's ever filmed. It's not that weird, but it is bad. It's bad. It's so bad. Goodbye.